Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're tuning in today because, well, we're diving into something that literally impacts every single one of us every single day. I mean, have you ever just stared at your bank account or tried to make a budget and thought, why on earth is this so incredibly hard? For the longest time, we've all been sold this idea that managing money is basically just one giant math test. We think it's all about spreadsheets and formulas and finding the exact perfect interest rate, right? But the material we're digging into today, it completely flips that script. It argues that building wealth actually isn't a math problem at all. It's a behavioral challenge. It's about how you think, how you feel, and most importantly, how you act when the pressure is really on.
And, this brings us to a seriously fascinating question. Just think about this for a second. Why is it that brilliant financial analysts, like actual literal geniuses who build complex market models for a living, why do they sometimes go completely spectacularly broke, while totally ordinary people, maybe a retired janitor or a humble school teacher, manage to build absolute financial empires? If money was just about being smart and acing the math test, well, the smartest people would always be the richest people. But they aren't. And that is the wild central paradox we are going to unravel today. So here is the absolute core of the whole thing. Money isn't math, it's behavior. Financial success, it has almost nothing to do with your IQ, your college degree, or how fast you can crunch numbers in your head. It is almost entirely about your psychology. It's about fighting your own human nature when the market is panicking and everyone else is panic selling. It's about those quiet daily habits you build, your emotional reactions to a surprise car repair, and having internal discipline over decades. You could literally take two people, give them the exact same income for 40 years, and they could end up in completely different universes when they retire. Why? Because of how they behave.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Great Money Myth. So the big myth we hear all the time is that we're all supposed to make perfectly logical, rational financial decisions, 100% of the time. But let's be real. In the real world, people do completely crazy things with their money. Some folks chronically overspend. Others absolutely refuse to invest even a single dime. And some just take massive, reckless risks. Now, to an outside observer, these choices look totally insane. But to the person actually making them, it makes perfect sense. Think about someone who grew up really broke, dealing with severe financial scarcity. They might develop this deep-seated, totally understandable fear of running out of money. And as an adult, their behavior reflects that past. They hoard every penny. They might be terrified to invest or spend, even when they can totally afford it. Now, flip that around. Someone who grew up super wealthy, where money was just always there. They might develop a habit of spending freely simply because they've never actually felt the sting of scarcity. See, they aren't crazy. Actually, scratch that. Their decisions just make perfect sense based on the unique lives they've lived. There really is no single right way to look at money, just different perspectives shaped by our own personal histories.
Moving right along to Section 2, offense versus defense.
This is where we get into the actual mechanics of accumulating wealth. And we're going to pinpoint the fatal flaw that causes so many people to lose their money once they finally get a hold of it. It turns out the skills you need to actually get wealthy are completely, totally different from the skills you need to stay wealthy. Getting rich? That's playing offense. It means taking risks, being optimistic, putting yourself out there, and being super aggressive in your career or your investments. You got to take a leap, right? But staying rich? That is playing defense. That requires the exact opposite mindset. It requires protecting what you have, being a little bit paranoid, practicing some serious humility, and avoiding catastrophic mistakes. Most people fail financially because they never realize they need to actively switch from playing offense to playing defense once they've built up their wealth. They just keep taking massive, swinging risks until, poof, they lose the whole shebang.
And that brings us to what I like to call the illusion of income. Let's talk about a massive salary. Say $500,000, 500,000 bucks. When we hear a number like that, our brains instantly go, wow, okay, that person is automatically rich. We just equate high income with guaranteed wealth. But remember our core rule here. Money isn't math, it's behavior. A high income is literally just a measure of cash flow. It's just numbers printed on a pay stub. It doesn't tell us a single thing about what that person is actually doing with all that cash behind closed doors. High cash flow absolutely does not automatically equal wealth accumulation.
Check this out. You can have someone making $50,000 a year who is actively successfully building long-term wealth. How? By keeping their expenses incredibly low, avoiding debt like the plague, and investing a portion of every single paycheck without fail.
On the flip side, you can have someone making $500,000 a year who is completely, desperately broke. Why? Because they're spending $505,000 a year. It's not about how much you make. The single most crucial formula you've got to remember is that saving is simply greater than earning. Your savings rate, which is basically the gap between your ego and your income, is the only thing that actually builds a brick wall between you and financial ruin.
Let's dive into section 3, the illusion of status. We are social creatures, right? We have egos and we care deeply about what other people think of us. It's just human nature. Because of this, people constantly chase status instead of actual, genuine wealth. They prioritize looking rich to the outside world way over actually being financially secure in their private lives. And how do we broadcast this fake wealth? Well, through flashy items. We go out and buy luxury cars with massive, suffocating monthly payments. We buy designer clothes with logos plastered all over them, flashy watches, giant houses, and let's be totally honest with ourselves here, we usually buy these things specifically to impress strangers at red lights or in the grocery store aisle. But buying these highly visible status symbols actively drains the exact money that could have made those people genuinely wealthy.
So here is the big, hushed secret of the financial world. Real wealth, it's what you don't see. It's totally invisible. Wealth isn't that roaring sports car in the driveway. Wealth is the money that was not spent on the sports car. It's the retirement accounts, the index funds, the emergency savings. It's the optionality and the total freedom sitting quietly in a bank account. You can't see someone's brokerage account when you walk past them on the street, and that makes it incredibly hard to judge who is actually rich and who is just walking around wearing a whole lot of very expensive, very stressful debt.
Because true wealth is invisible, we tend to get a highly distorted view of what success actually looks like. We read these perfectly clean, polished success stories in magazines or on our social feeds about people who hit it big. But the messy, real-world reality behind those clean stories? Luck and risk play a significantly bigger role than anyone really likes to admit. Behind almost every massive financial triumph is this hidden web of perfect timing, incredible luck, and entirely uncontrollable circumstances. And this is exactly why you should never, ever compare your financial life too closely to anyone else's. You simply cannot see the unseen risks they took or the lucky breaks they stumbled into along the way.
Which brings us to section 4, the power of patience. Listen, to win with money, you don't need to be perfect. You really don't. You don't need to find the absolute perfect once-in-a-lifetime investments, and you definitely don't need perfect market timing. You literally just need time. Wealth is not built fast. It's built through boring consistency and just letting things grow completely uninterrupted. If you start investing early, even with incredibly small amounts in year 1, and you just stay consistent through all the market's crazy ups and downs, something truly magical happens. By year 10, you've built a solid foundation. But by year 20, you experience the absolute explosive magic of compounding. That's where your money starts making its own money at a staggering rate. The data is super clear on this. Investing early, avoiding catastrophic mistakes, and just giving it time will absolutely always be trying to invest huge lump sums much later in life.
And finally, section 5. Freedom is the real goal.
So why do we do all this? Why save? Why be so patient? Look, the goal of accumulating money is not to just sit on it and hoard it like a dragon. And it is certainly not about buying more useless stuff just to impress strangers. The real, true definition of being rich is having absolute control over your time. It means waking up every single morning and saying, I can do literally whatever I want today. Think about that crushing, heavy anxiety of being trapped in a toxic job simply because you have a massive car payment hanging over your head. Now, contrast that with the utter peace of mind of having savings. Money buys you control. It buys you the ability to confidently say no. It means not being forced into things by your circumstances. Buying time and autonomy, that pays the highest dividend of any financial asset in the entire world. That right there is true financial freedom. So how do we actually get there? Here is the playbook. These are the simple, everyday rules that pretty much guarantee success over a lifetime. Number 1, spend less than you make. I know, it sounds super obvious, but it is the absolute fundamental law of gravity for wealth. 2, save consistently, no matter what the market is doing. Just keep plugging away. 3, be patient. Let compounding do all the heavy lifting for you. 4, avoid showing off. Seriously, stop buying things just to feed your ego. 5, don't compare your timeline to others. Remember that luck and hidden risks massively distort what we see on the surface. And finally, number 6, protect what you build. Once you've made it, switch from offense right into defense.
Let's summarize the bottom line here. Wealth is built by behavior, not intelligence. The people who ultimately win the money game are usually not the smartest people in the room. They aren't necessarily the highest earners, and they don't always have those fancy degrees. The people who win are simply disciplined. They are patient, and they are deeply in control of their own emotions and actions, regardless of what the rest of the world is freaking out about.
I want to leave you with a question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. Look closely at your own life right now and ask yourself honestly, are your financial behaviors actively building a hidden fortune that will eventually buy your freedom, or are they just feeding your ego today? Thank you so much for exploring the psychology of wealth with me, and remember, your behavior is your absolute greatest asset. Catch you next time.